what's behind you? That's cool.
Yeah, yes. This is a painting by an artist that I represent. His name is Moncho 1929. That's his moniker.
Cool.
He does these beautiful mixed media paintings with mixed subject matter, and they're part of the Chimera series.
Firstly, congratulations on 30 years of ArtSeen. That's a big milestone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a
So
wonderful journey.
tell me about the origin story and a little bit of the history. When you started this 30 years ago, what did the business look like then and how has it evolved?
Well, when I started, I was in college. It was my last year of architecture school at USC. And so I had several connections with friends in the fine arts school that was right next door. Whenever I had a break from my studies in architecture, I would walk over there and just out of curiosity, investigate what they were doing and sit, with them in their studios and would have these long chats, long esoteric chats about art and architecture and design. And it was such a fulfilling experience, and it inspired me in my work that I was doing in architecture at the time. And so more and more, I found that I would find my way over there to hang out with the fine arts students, and I found it more stimulating. And so that's where it all began. So my friends in the architecture school began to see that I was sort of floating in and out of class as I was sort of distracted by the fine arts school. I didn't want to be an artist necessarily, but I was very intrigued with what was going on over there. And so little by little, I found that I had an interest more in finding opportunities for my friends who were in the fine arts school in showing their work and possibly even selling their work. I started to form partnerships with different business owners around the city where they had spaces that were conducive to showing art. So alternative spaces to show art, basically. I was developing these relationships with these business owners. So I would these artworks in public view, and then I would get these business owners to help sponsor a reception or a show of some kind. And so that's how I started, very grassroots way of starting the business and gaining a following. And then other artists started to see what I was doing, and so word got around, and so then I started to meet other artists outside of that initial university community of artists, other artists in the LA area that were very interested in what I was doing and being a part of things. And I was a young kid. I was only 23 years old. I didn't really know what I was. I knew that I had a knack for it, and I really enjoyed with artists and trying to find opportunities for them. And so it just evolved over time very naturally. I started to tap into clientele of people that could support my efforts with the artists and in turn fuel the practices of these artists that I was representing, and was making money at it as well. And so I thought, hey, this is something that I really enjoy. And it just kind of pulled me away from architecture at the time. I was working at an architecture firm, and I wasn't as, how should I say, enthused with that experience as I was with the art experience. And so I jumped. I just decided by 1994 to make that serious jump into it full time. And so here we are 30 years later. Of course, so much has happened in that time over the past 3 decades.
At what point did partnering artists with architects and designers come into the picture?
That happened, I would say it started in the late 90s. I started to go to different events and mixers where I could meet and introduce myself to people in the design industry. I used to go to this thing called West Week at the PDC back in the 90s, and that was a very exciting time. That was really the only way to introduce myself to that community of interior designers, and they really were quite supportive and introduced me to a wide variety of their clientele. So it was a great way to tap into the community of interior design here in LA and back in the late 90s.
What does it look like when you collaborate with an interior designer? How does an interior designer collaborate with an art curator?
Well, essentially, once we get to engage with one another, I then set up a meeting with the designer either on site or at their office, and then they will show me some examples of some of the projects that they've worked on in the past and some of the things that they are presently working on. And so this way I gain an understanding of that designer's history, what their design ethos is, and what they want to achieve with certain projects. And so that's the initial steps, that I take with the designer. They'll start showing me floor plans. They'll start showing me mood boards. They'll introduce me to the space, perhaps in the early stages of design and construction, which is really the best time to get in on a project so that we can start thinking about art very, very early on. And then, of course, and then eventually we start selecting different artists that could be a good fit for the project. Sometimes they even get to meet the artist when we'll go to, let's say, an art studio tour, which is really a lot of fun for me. I get to invite the designer and the client, and they get to meet the artist in person, and they get the story of that artist's history and their process, and see their practice, the full scope of their practice. And that's a really exciting part of the business for me as well, is seeing that interaction.
And I'd imagine because you have a background as an architect, you really speak their language more than maybe most people that work in art and don't have a background in design. Tell me
Yeah.
about how that helps inform the process for you.
Yes. Well, even to this day, that knowledge that I acquired in architecture school helps me understand designers and architects when I can speak their language, understand their language. I can read plans, I can see a space in 3 dimensions, even when it's presented to me in floor plan or elevation. I can connect the dots, if you will, and really, visualize things as they visualize things. So I
Mhm.
think that really helps a lot. And then I can communicate that to their client, and it just makes things run a lot smoother, a lot easier.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Can you share some examples of successful collaborations with interior designers?
I've worked with firms like Gensler, for instance. I worked with them on different projects. I worked with them on an LAX with British Airways and Qantas Airways. So they designed the oneworld lounge. And so I got to participate in that as the exclusive art advisor and curator. So I curated a whole selection of artworks for that space, mostly contemporary artists that were doing abstract works. It was an international group of artists that I got to introduce to that space, because obviously travel, international travel, you want to have different influences from different parts of the world. So I had a European artist, I had an American artist, I had a South American artist, an Asian artist.
Very
So it
cool.
had that, very multicultural aspect to it. And that was a really exciting project to work on. Design collaboration I've worked with is, you may have heard of them. They've been featured in AD 100 several times. And, they've been a long time client of mine as well. So they do a lot of high-end residential work.
Yeah.
And so whenever they have a project with an art component, they'll call me and they'll ask for, my advice, my expertise on, how I can help them with that. So we've done different projects from Southern California up to Northern California. These are very wealthy clients who, have ample art budgets. And so I've placed, various painters with them, mostly painters, some photography as well. So that's been a long time collaboration. And I've learned a lot along the way about how they work, and they've learned about my artists and how I work. So it's a very symbiotic thing. And so that's how it works with, some of my most successful collaborations with designers are ones that evolve over many years, if not decades. So we have a really clear understanding of one another and what their priorities are, and, what my artists can offer.
Why does an interior designer want to work with an art curator? What is something
Mhm.
that a designer might miss if they go about art curating on their own?
Well, when they decide to work with someone like myself, you're not only, my obvious assistance in selecting and acquiring art, but you're getting 30 years of experience in the LA art community, all of those connections.
Yeah.
And so a designer already has their work cut out for them when it comes to designing the space, the furniture and accessories that are selected, the finishes. It's a lot. It's a lot of moving parts for them. So having somebody like me partner up with them to help them with the art selection, is a big help, because that's a whole job in and of itself. And so I bring all those years of experience and expertise to the table, where they can say, okay, Leonardo, here is my vision. And how do you think you can assist me? What artist do you recommend that will, fit into this project? And so it's a collaborative thing. They certainly get to be involved, but not to the extent that, they have to, worry about business relationship with the artist. Sometimes artist temperament can, be a factor. So, those are also some things that I can provide a buffer with.
You're also a
Uh,
personality manager, yes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And also I'm also a project manager. So, depending on the complexity of the project, I handle everything from concept to completion to installation of the project.
Yeah.
And, all of the details, all of the minutia of a project like that, the demands of a project like that the designer just doesn't have to worry about. I make it just so much easier for them.
Yeah. I want to ask a little bit about selecting art. What sort of criteria are you looking at when you're selecting an artist to represent and an artist to bring to a...
Yes, well, that is kind of an involved, lengthy process. I will find an artist through an art fair or an art exhibition or simply through referral. And then it would involve me, having, an in-depth conversation with the artist and then finding out where they have shown their work, what collections they're in, what stage they're at in their career, really. Then, once we establish that, I can then do a studio visit with the artist where we get to meet in person and I get to see the artwork in person, because it's not really until you see the artwork in person that you can really, really understand the quality of the artwork, the craftsmanship, and where the artist is coming from. Also, personality is definitely a big part of my deciding to represent an artist. It's so much easier when the artist and I can get along and we're on the same page as far as where they want to take their career, what their expectations are, what my expectations are. Working with an artist of a similar is always a bonus.
From a trend perspective, well, really before we talk about how you use trends or how you work with them, you give me your working definition of a trend. I feel like the word has just become so abstract and it means something different to consumers, designers, manufacturers. So what's yours?
Well, being in the business for as many years as I have been, I have noticed, these overarching trends, in the art world. So, when I was first starting out, abstract works on canvas, were the thing, if you will. And then, over time, I saw that there was more of an emphasis on figurative work, so there was a sort of a pendulum swing.
Okay.
More representational work, more portraiture, landscapes, even if it was more abstracted landscapes, there was definitely, a trend towards that. And now the trend is leaning more towards textured or soft sculpture, textiles, that kind of a thing. I've seen more of a move towards that. I represent this wonderful artist. Her name is Mary Little. She has a wonderful studio here in LA. I worked with her for several years now, and her work involves raw canvas that is very carefully sewn in using different methods, creating this three-dimensional effect, with pockets and undulations, and it's very sculptural. It's a soft sculpture that can be hung on the wall, can be hung from the ceiling, and she's incredible strides just over the last 5 years or so. So she's definitely one to watch. Mary Little is her name.
That's cool. And how long do those phases, those trends last?
I've seen these trends last for up to 10 years. And it's simply a matter of watching the artists that I represent and, what they're doing in a certain time in their career. And then eventually they will tire of the work that they've been doing for some time and they'll want to do something different, which is always a big commitment. It's a big jump and a big risk for the artist, but I think it's part of the evolution. I think it has to happen at some point.
Because selecting art for residences is so subjective and speculative, what do you say to the client who comes to you and says, I just want pieces that are going to be an amazing financial investment. I want a great ROI on my pieces.
Yes, yes. So I have resources for that. So when a client comes to me and they say, look, I'm looking for blue chip art, let's say, I'm looking for an Alex Katz, or I'm looking for a Hockney or a Warhol, or in most of those cases, they're looking for these, limited edition photographs. I can definitely provide that. And it's always fun to mix that with emerging or living established artists. I prefer that. But if a client is looking strictly for blue chip art, I can definitely provide that. And that is satisfying in its own way.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of artists, Mary Little and the guy behind you. Who are
Yes.
some of your other emerging artists that or styles that you're really excited about right now?
Yeah, well, I'm working with a few new artists who I'm currently exhibiting right now. There's an artist by the name of Charlie Edmiston who does these beautiful, colorful wall pieces that can be hung on the wall. They're made of wood, MDF, acrylic paint, and they're really beautifully crafted. Again, his name is Charlie Edmiston. He's an LA-based artist. There's another artist. Her name is Adele Renault. She's from Belgium, and she does these beautiful, hyper-realistic paintings of desert fauna. So it could be a cactus, it could be, these, beautiful desert flowers. It has this botanical quality and to the work. And she also does large scale murals, around the country and even abroad. So she's one to watch, Adele Renault. Another artist is Steve Martinez. He's an incredible LA based artist. He's based in Long Beach. And he's also part of this exhibition, and he does these large scale mural works around the city and around the state as well. And he's also a fine art painter. So in this current exhibition that I'm hosting at Water Garden in Santa Monica, I'm showcasing his work. I'm the exclusive art curator at Water Garden in Santa Monica. It's this tech/corporate campus in the middle of Santa Monica. So I've been their curator there for the past 7 years. And I put together these annual public art exhibitions for them where we show large scale paintings in their public areas. And it's been a really successful art program. It's gotten a lot of. And then finally, there's another artist, Chance Cooper, is inspired by different stories. They're different narratives in his works. They're very colorful. There's sort of this line art quality to them. It's really fun and playful. It has a sort of straightforward, kind of simple animation quality to it. You just have to see it to really, really appreciate it. But his name is Chance Cooper, also an LA-based artist. So those are four new artists to watch.
That's awesome. So you've mentioned Water Garden and the Gensler projects. One of my favorite questions to ask is, what is the dream project that you've yet to realize?
Well, there's one that's in the work, and I can't say very much about it. It is for very prominent here in Los Angeles. It's a foundation that's been around for 75 years. And they're moving into new headquarters, and I have an extensive selection of art for their new headquarters. And
cool.
So they're currently reviewing it, and so it's sort of a collection of the best of artists that I have represented over the years. So it's artists that I began representing 20 plus years ago, up to the most current artists that I've only been working with for about a year or so.
Oh, wow.
So it covers a whole range of styles and media. And it includes also commissioned portraiture. So it covers a broad range. And so this is kind of the dream project for me at the moment. But I can't say too much about it because it isn't yet signed off on. But
all right. It's like
I'm
a
really
history of ArtSeen. That's so exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and as I said, they're a very prominent foundation, and so that to be associated, with them would be just incredible to be associated with that organization.
That's major. Very cool. That's
another project that I've worked on over the years. I work with here in Malibu. They're called Marisol Malibu, and since 2010, I've been their exclusive art curator. And what they do is they build these beautiful multi-million-dollar spec homes in North Malibu. And they're right off of PCH County line. So it's one of the most scenic coastlines in all of Southern California. So for the past 14 years now, every time they build a new spec house, and we're talking about homes in the $20 to $30 million range, they approach me and they have me bring in the artwork and curate everything very carefully for them. And then usually when somebody pulls the trigger on one of these properties, they also take the artwork. So the artwork is included in the property. It's a turnkey kind of project. So there is a house that is currently on the market. And so we're waiting to see when that finally is purchased by someone. But I think that's going to happen very soon. It's been on the market since August. And
I saw the zero carbon ready house. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Incredible.
These are zero carbon homes, and they're very special because they were the first of their kind at that level in California. They built the first one a couple of years ago. That one sold, and now they're on to their second one, which is currently on the market. And then there's a third one and a fourth one that are also planned. Yeah.
Very exciting. I think it was the first one
yeah.
I saw. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Very cool project.
Yeah, and then lastly, we have an exhibition coming up. I have a partnership with the Luxury Living Group in West Hollywood. Their high-end showroom on Beverly Boulevard, right next to Lanier Rosé. That's between Robertson and Doheny on Beverly. And I'm their curator as well. So we put together these annual art exhibitions. We're going to be installing the new exhibition in the next couple of weeks. I'll definitely keep you and your audience posted on that if they want to follow us on social media.
Yeah.
Instagram handle is at ArtSeen LA, ArtSeen LA. And then our website is laartseen.com. It's LAartseen.com. SEEN.com.
Perfect note to end on, because that was going to be my last question, is how do we stay in touch?
That's exactly how.
Leonardo, thank you so much for doing this. I so appreciate it.
Sure. No, my pleasure. And thank you for this interview. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome.
Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too.